To speak many times. Some people may never have heard her speak. Ghada, for people who know, was a victim. Her family were a victim of the Nakba. They were driven from their homes in West Jerusalem. Ghada has an illustrious career behind her. She's going to get terribly embarrassed if I'm saying these things, but she's a doctor of medicine. She's an academic, and latterly, obviously, she's very much an activist. She worked in the University of Exeter, and she is an author. Many people may have read some of her books. This is her latest book, One State. This is quite interesting, and we might be interesting for the questioning afterwards, was published in April 2023, therefore 6 months before October the 7th. I've asked Ghada how long she wants to speak before. She says she'll speak until she's finished. So we'll let her get on with it. Okay. And afterwards we're going to have a few questions. Okay.
Okay. Thanks very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. First of all, thank you very much for coming. I take it you're the people who are not on the march today, happening in London, and it's very good to see you. I'm going to obviously talk to you about the current situation and the various ideas that arise from the current situation. Obviously, I don't need to tell people here that Gaza has been devastated, really devastated. And we must, of course, in speaking about Gaza, we mustn't forget the West Bank, where settlers and the Israeli army have been attacking civilians and killing people and abducting people, so we must never forget about them, but of course not on the scale of what is happening in Gaza. It's obviously no exaggeration to say that Gaza has been absolutely devastated. Nearly 40,000 people killed, over 80,000 injured. These are conservative figures because we don't know how many dead are under the rubble, and it's very difficult to get accurate statistics under conditions where the health officials have to work with constant Israeli bombing. You know, one has to actually remember that. We know that Gaza's hospitals have really all been damaged, some irreparably, some barely functioning. Gaza's universities, schools have been, in the case of universities, completely destroyed, and many, many schools damaged. And mosques, and buildings, and people's residences. And we mustn't forget the damage done to the soil of Gaza, the environment, the natural environment, where who knows how long it will take after the war stops and clearing ends, how long it will take for the ground to recover. That's something obviously people cannot now think about because of the loss of life. And so when you remember that not only has this devastation been rained on the small strip of land, but it's left a large number of people, over 2 million, with really nowhere to go. Think about this. The situation in Gaza is unprecedented, unique. I don't mean by that acts of war have not taken place before, or devastation hasn't been wrought on communities, on towns, especially in the Second World War. We know that that happens. What is very unusual about this is that the people of Gaza are enclosed in a cage Now, you know very well that when populations are attacked or become victims of war, they can flee, they can go somewhere else. Here, you have a unique situation in which the people who are being bombed and killed are penned up. It's quite extraordinary. I know of no historical parallel to this. And so that's what's happening. Now, obviously, we know that there are mass atrocities, child killing on an industrial scale, sadistic torture of Palestinian prisoners, of ordinary Palestinians, and also you will have seen, or if you haven't, do look at the footage, the videos posted by Israeli soldiers showing off the way that they're celebrating the killing of people in Gaza, and really very obscene, some of this stuff. It's very disturbing, where you have soldiers with women's underwear, where they've been inside people's homes, taken their underwear, and they parade themselves around in front of the camera with this underwear. If you haven't seen it, really, you should look as an illustration of the kind of sadistic insanity which seems to have gripped the Israeli soldiers. Now, I think many of you will know all this that I've talked about. We don't need, at a time like this and with an audience like you, we don't need to detail again and more the massacres, the killings. I mean, yesterday, an UNRWA school where people were sheltering was bombed by the Israelis. Many people killed. Same thing again today. Another school, same story. This has become so repetitive that people have got used to it. And that's very, very serious. Where, you know, if you're hearing about the latest atrocity in Gaza, it doesn't evoke now, for a lot of people, the same instant horror and outrage that it did shortly after October 7th, you know, when the Israeli army really swung into action. And this is a very worrying sign. It's one of those where you have to sort of imagine that the next step will be to normalize this kind of violence as being somehow acceptable. You know, it's Gaza again, it's more Palestinians being killed, etc. But what I really want to focus on is an aspect of this, which is really very important, and without which it could not have happened. And what I mean by that is impunity, Israeli impunity. You see, if you allow a set of criminals or somebody deranged or somebody who's psychopathic to run loose without police, without constraint, without restraint, what do you expect? What do you expect, really? There will be damage, there will be people killed, and so on. That is the situation we have with Israel, and we've had right from the beginning, after October 7th. A situation of total impunity. Israel can do literally whatever it likes. Please, I want to pause for a minute to let that sink in. You know how horrific that is? That somebody can do whatever they like. There are no restraints, no constraints. They themselves clearly have no red lines. They don't subscribe to any kind of human norms that most of us are aware of. They clearly don't. But the really serious part of this is that they're allowed to behave like this. And that is something we need to think about. Because you know, as well as I do, that what is enabling Israel to do this is Western support. Of course, the United States stands in the forefront, but the United Kingdom, Germany, France, and various other European countries also support Israel's impunity and give it permission to behave in whatever way it likes. Not only that, but especially as in the case of the United States, they arm Israel. Now, you will know that without constant US armaments flowing to Israel, the war would stop tomorrow. It really would, because Israel has exhausted all its stockpiles. It depends for most items of its arsenal on the United States, and in a secondary capacity, the United Kingdom, and of course Germany. So these countries are actively complicit in the genocide, the atrocities, the crimes that are taking place in Gaza and in the West Bank. Now, what is that about? And I invite you to give some thought to that, because we're living here, we're not in Gaza. We cannot take up arms and help the people of Gaza by fighting with them. We cannot do any of that. But what we can do is question our government. What are you doing? What are you doing supporting this mass murder? What is that? How do you justify it? These are questions that need to be addressed to opinion formers, to political figures in this country. And I would very much like to see similar actions in which civil society takes an active role in the United States, in European countries which are arming Israel. So I invite you, and I welcome questions, to think about this, because that is something actually where we can have an effect. I wanted to say that, and I honestly don't want to discourage anybody. Look, marching for Gaza, demonstrating, making a real noise about it, helping Gaza refugees, wherever, is marvelous. It has to go on. But you always have to be aware, what effect is this actually having? You know, and I know, that we can have all the marches in the world at the moment. You know there's a global movement of support for Palestinians. What difference has it made on the ground? That's the question one has to ask oneself. What difference has it made? Answer, none. I'm talking about the actual people at the end of a gun, at the end of a bomb, who are dying just as fast and just as severely and badly as they had before. That does not mean, by the way, that we stop marching and we stop making a splash about that stuff. Of course not. However, we always have to look for where we can actually make a difference, while continuing all these acts of solidarity, of course. And this is why I'm so focused on the question of Israel's impunity, because without it, Israel could not behave in this way. And by the way, to those who say, oh, well, you know, the United States is what really matters, you know, we in Britain, and you've heard the Foreign Secretary say this kind of thing, you know, our contribution is very small, etc. In fact, we do know that Israel is extremely sensitive to a withdrawal of support by certain Western states. It's very sensitive, and it does not want to see that. Those are the traditional, if you like, the northern Western states, the United States, United Kingdom, Germany, and to a certain extent France. These countries matter to Israel. So it's not just a matter of weighing up how many guns have we provided, and how much ammunition have we provided. It has a tremendous effect on the Israelis. If, for example, this country was to come out and say, right, enough, we will not support you, Israel, we will have nothing more to do with you. Diplomatic ties are cut until you stop these massacres. Imagine the effect of that. So it's not it's not cosmetic what I'm talking about. It's actually quite important. Okay, so what effects has this war since, well, it's not a war really, it's an assault since October 7th? What effect has it had? Well, of course it has had effect. It's not, it's not that nothing has happened. Various very important things have happened. Firstly, Israel's standing has plummeted despite the bravado, despite the arrogance of the Israeli leadership. The reality is they're very worried because Israel's standing has fallen on the international stage. US standing has also fallen on the international stage. The US, it really worries the United States because of their unflinching support for the genocide in Gaza and for this genocidal army. The whole world can see this, and it's had an effect. It's had an effect, and it's not one that the United States welcome. I sometimes sit and think about the effects of October 7th. Hamas could never have known, in my opinion, that the action on October 7th, the attack on Israel of October 7th, could ever have had the effects we see today. I don't believe they would have known that. And look at what's happening. All our understanding of the conflict, of the situation, has turned upside down. Global movement of solidarity with the Palestinians has come about as part of the enormous change. And many other things have happened, not least, of course, that the masks have fallen, that the pretense on the part of Western states, including this one, that they really support international law, international human rights and humanitarian law and civilized norms, that has been exploded. That myth has been exploded. We know very well that there is no support for international law. We know it's a cynical game. We know that what we're seeing is the exercise of might is right, and you can see it in Israel's behavior. After all, Israel, having faced the International Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court, what has it done? Taken no notice whatsoever. It trashed international law. It's been allowed to. It's been allowed to. Because the people who support it also trash international law. So that system is under enormous threat. And this is one of the things unmasked by October the 7th. So what are we left with? I feel among the consequences were those very negative ones, but there are positive ones. I think people sense, you see, you've got to ask yourself, what is this global support for Palestine? What is it? Is it really just about a little people in the Middle East who've been treated badly and who are suffering this murderous assault on them? Is it only about that? I don't think it is. You see, I think this has created an awareness in people that civilization is at stake, that you don't stand by and watch a kind of cruelty, the kind of brutality and the sadism of a powerful army against the defenseless people, that is not a question of that's something, crime, whatever. It's more than that. It's an assault on civilization, on civilized values. And what I have been very encouraged by is that what we're calling global solidarity is another word for describing the growth of what Edward Said called a community of conscience. That people who had never heard of Palestinians, who might not even like them, who might not like their culture, doesn't matter. They recognize that there are norms human beings must never transgress, and that people's consciences cannot allow this to pass. And that, I think, is an extremely encouraging sign, and it will grow. It will grow. All of you are part of the community of conscience. And I really want to end, finally, on where's this going? Where's all this heading? Now, that's a question all of us are asking. How long will it be? How will it end? Etc. I don't know how it will end, but I do know that there are certain pointers and certain principles that need to be taken into account when you're looking at the long-term result of all this and the long-term future. Firstly, Israel as constituted now is not fit for purpose. You know that most of Israel's population is behind this assault on Gaza. Numerous opinion polls amongst Jewish Israelis have shown this to be a fact. You've got to ask yourself, what's going on where ordinary people feel nothing when they hear about child death, pregnant women suffering on that scale, and support it. And in fact, not only that, but we know that some of those opinion polls have recorded people saying it's not enough, that the army needs to do more. Now, I would contend that a population that feels like this doesn't feel this by chance. This is the long-term result of a community of people, the Israeli Jewish community in Palestine, who really believe that they are very, very special and that they are better than these third-rate human beings, if they are human, who are called Palestinians. That kind of attitude does not make for a healthy population, it does not make for a peaceful outcome. Having said all that, though, I conclude with, we can't, it's a cop-out to say that, this sort of people you're dealing with, and, you have to indicate where this is going. Now, you see from my book, which was written, admittedly, months before October 7th, I would never have known that October 7th would happen. But what I've done in that book is point to a long-term future. You see, in the end, this can't go on, this can't hold. There are no more temporary fixes. So even if, the Israelis, there was a ceasefire tomorrow, and there were peace talks or something, and some arrangement, it won't work. It's gone too far. It needs a root and branch solution. And in my view, there is only one way, and that is for the people who inhabit the land between the river and the sea, whether they are Palestinian Arabs or whether they are Jewish Israelis, they have to share that land. And They can only share it in equality. They can only share it under the rule of a democratic state that has the rule of law, that has civilizational norms, that has moral principles, and that is the way forward, the only way forward. Now, I remember when the book first came out, I was doing quite a bit of publicity for it. You know, people would say, so do you really think that enemies, long-standing enemies like this, really could be lived together? Now, at that time, if that was a very difficult question to answer, imagine how it is now. And now, I do not suggest for a moment that the kind of Israeli public I've just been talking about, imbued with these ideas, can possibly form fellow citizens. I don't believe that for a moment. They can't. Not now. But it does not take away our responsibility in still planning a long-term trajectory. This is a trajectory. To arrive at the one democratic state is a trajectory towards an aim. I don't know when it will happen, but we have to have it in our minds, and that is what we have to work towards. There is actually no other civilized, humane, moral, or practical way forward other than the one state in the end. Thank you very much.